Perimeter Station Kest 9 had been enforcing coalition frontier treaties for 140 years. Its compliance record was near perfect. 97% of colonial disputes resolved without escalation, a statistic the Directorate repeated in every briefing packet as though the number itself were a kind of armor. In 140 years, exactly 4 enforcement teams had failed to return from a correction assignment intact. In the history of the station, no team had ever returned early, without their target in custody, without a single shot fired by the target herself, and without a full account of what had happened to them. The case file open on the review table that morning had one line at the top that every member of the panel had read at least twice. Subject not detained. Team returned. Subject remains on Calder's Reach. The colony of Calder's Reach sat on the edge of surveyed space, a rock with thin atmosphere and thinner law, populated by 1,100 humans who had been left there by a mining consortium that folded 9 years earlier. The coalition did not usually bother with worlds like Calder's Reach. It bothered with this one because a marshal named Iris Vaughn had, over 4 years, done something that should not have been possible for a single unarmored human with no formal combat training on record. She had held the colony's perimeter against 3 separate raider incursions, the last of which had involved a boarding party of 22. Her file said she had survived alone. Iris Vaughn was 29, born on a supply freighter somewhere in the Calder Belt, raised on 3 different mining rocks before her family settled on Calder's Reach when she was 11. Director Oscar Main had read her intake file 5 times because the first read produced a number that seemed inconsistent with everything else on the page. No military service, no formal training record, no augmentation history, and a documented engagement count that put her above most decorated coalition officers twice her age. The verification had come back confirmed 3 separate times through 3 separate channels. Iris had not mentioned any of this when she was brought to the station. She had arrived with a coalition escort, found the quarters assigned to her, and asked the guard at the door what time meals were served. She had not asked why she was there. She had not asked what would happen to her. She had simply unpacked a single bag and sat down to wait, turning over in her fingers a plain iron ring on a length of cord, something she had carried, according to the intake log, through all 3 incursions, and had not once let out of her possession. The hearing was convened in the station's review hall, a long room with a raised panel table, and a gallery that filled faster than usual once word spread that the Vaughn case would be discussed in open session. Coalition officers of a dozen species sat in the gallery. In the front row, in the seat reserved for the mission's ranking survivor, sat Envoy Captain Bess Calloran. Calloran was Thren, 3rd-generation station-born, 12 years into a service record with no formal blemish, and had been selected to lead the 3-person correction team specifically because his file described him as methodical, unprovoked by hostile targets, exceptional in de-escalation. He had prepared for this hearing the way certain officers prepare for hearings they expect to win, which is to say, he had rehearsed the question he intended to ask, and had chosen the moment to ask it with the timing and tone of someone who had thought about very little else since returning. Several officers in the gallery smiled when Calloran stood to address the panel. It was the particular category of smile that appears in rooms where an institution's confidence is about to be reaffirmed. Not cruelty exactly, but certainty, the kind of certainty that has never once been asked to account for itself. "Marshal Vaughn," Calloran said, turning toward her seat at the lower table, "for the record, how many coalition personnel would you say you have engaged in total across your time on Calder's Reach?" Director Main, at the head of the panel table, said nothing. He had pulled the mission footage into the record 2 weeks earlier and had been waiting since then for the right moment to let it play. "That's a reasonable question," Iris said, in the tone of someone who genuinely found it reasonable. "Do you want the raider engagements or just the 3 of you?" A ripple went through the gallery, not laughter, something quieter, the recalibration of an audience realizing the question had assumed an answer that had not yet been given. Calloran's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Just us," he said. "The correction team." 3, Iris said, "all 3 of you." The smiles in the gallery stopped the way a wave stops. The ones closest to Calloran first, then spreading outward, row by row, until the room was quiet in a way it had not been since the hearing opened. Director Main opened the footage. "The correction team's own suit recorders logged the encounter in full," he said. "I'll play the relevant segments. This is not simulation footage. This is documentary record from Coalition equipment. Segment 1. Enforcer Das, the team's tracker, had located Iris's position within 4 hours of planetfall, faster than projected, a fact the after-action report had flagged as a credit to his skill. The footage showed him approaching her camp at dusk, weapon holstered per correction protocol, intending a standard verbal engagement. The recording showed 11 seconds of dialogue. It showed Iris rise from where she had been sitting, cross 4 meters of open ground before Das had finished his second sentence, and disarm him without breaking his footing. The final frame of his suit recorder showed him sitting against a rock formation, uninjured, weapon 20 meters away, with Iris already walking back toward her camp. The gallery had gone still. Segment 2. Enforcer Prell, the team's specialist in restraint procedure, had attempted the engagement alone the following morning, believing, according to his own log, that Das's failure had been a matter of surprise, not skill. His suit recorder showed a longer exchange, nearly 90 seconds, in which Iris asked him 3 questions about the mission's authorization before he answered any of them honestly. When he moved to restrain her, the footage showed her step inside the motion rather than away from it, and the recording ended with Prell seated on the ground, his own restraint cuffs now fastened around his own wrists. Iris crouched in front of him, explaining, without raising her voice, exactly which regulation the Coalition had violated by sending an uninvited correction team onto a treaty world without a formal writ. By the second segment, Calloran was not smiling. He was watching with the expression of someone doing a calculation that was going to take considerably longer than the hearing had allotted for it. Segment 3. Calloran's own recorder. He had gone last after 2 team members had failed, believing his rank and his training in de-escalation would resolve what force had not. The footage showed him approaching without a weapon drawn at all, hands visible, speaking slowly, offering Iris formal terms, safe transport, a hearing representation. The footage showed Iris listening to the entire offer without interrupting. It showed her set down the tool she had been holding. It showed her say, quietly, that she would come on one condition: that both of his colleagues be treated for the injuries she had not caused but had allowed the terrain to cause, and that the writ authorizing the mission be produced before they left the surface. There was no writ. There had never been a writ. The correction order had been issued on the basis of the engagement count alone, without a colonial magistrate's signature, without Calder's Reach's own consent. A procedural failure that the Directorate's own charter listed as grounds for immediate mission termination. Calloran had not known that when he accepted the assignment. He knew it now in front of the full gallery on the record. The room did not react with sound. It reacted with silence, the particular silence of an institution watching its own paperwork fail in real time. Iris had not spoken during any of the 3 segments. She sat with her hands folded, the iron ring turning once between her fingers, watching the footage with the room, her expression unchanged from the moment the hearing opened. Her eyes had not changed based on what the footage showed. Only, it seemed, based on some private accounting she was doing that had nothing to do with the gallery's reaction. When the footage ended, Director Main closed the file without comment. "I have one more question," Calloran said, and his voice had lost the prepared quality it carried at the start of the hearing. "Why send us back at all? You disarmed 3 trained officers. You could have kept us. You could have left us. Why walk all 3 of us back to the shuttle yourself?" "Because you weren't the problem," Iris said. "The order was." Calloran stood for a moment without speaking, and then did something no one in the gallery expected. He inclined his head once, the Thren gesture reserved for acknowledging a superior officer, and walked toward the door without asking for further comment. He stopped at the threshold. "The engagement count in my report was wrong," he said, not turning around. "It said 3 targets neutralized. It should have said 3 officers corrected." He did not wait for a response. The door closed behind him without sound. Iris rose, gathered the single bag she had brought into the hearing room, and slipped the iron ring back onto its cord around her neck. The same motion, the file would later note, that appeared in the very first frame of the very first suit recorder, 4 years and 3 incursions earlier, the day the ring had first been photographed at Calder's Reach. She walked out without a final statement. No one in the gallery asked her to make one. Director Main remained at the panel table after the room had emptied. He opened the station's compliance record, the master file that tracked every correction mission the Directorate had ever authorized, and found the entry for Calder's Reach. Beside the mission status field, Where the standard entries read resolved, escalated, or terminated, he typed 3 words and closed the file. Correction not required. Required.